I debated for months whether to tell this story at all. Carrying it felt like a weight pressing inward, constant and unseen, but impossible to ignore. Names and small details have been altered, yet what happened remains unchanged. It unfolded during my junior year at a mid-sized liberal arts college in the Pacific Northwest, a place defined by rain-darkened walkways, evergreen trees hemming in the campus, and a quiet isolation that made everything feel more intense. I was majoring in literature with a minor in philosophy, working relentlessly because my goal was clear, a PhD, then teaching. My grades mattered more than anything. Scholarships depended on them, and even a single misstep felt dangerous. I was also part of a sorority, not known for excess, but for structure, community service, organized events, and just enough social life to keep me from disappearing entirely into the library. Balance was the idea, even if it often felt fragile. That semester, I enrolled in an upper-level seminar titled Victorian Gothic Literature. Enrollment was capped at 20 students, and the class met twice a week in one of the oldest humanities buildings on campus. The floors creaked when you shifted your weight. The windows rattled whenever the wind pushed in from the forested hills beyond the quad. The room was dim even during daylight, as if it were designed to suit the material we studied. Professor Harlan was officially in charge. She was respected, brilliant, and almost never there. Conferences and research trips pulled her away more often than not, leaving the course in the hands of her teaching assistant, Elias. He was in his early 30s, always carrying himself with a restless intensity. A faint shadow of stubble never quite left his jaw. Wire-rimmed glasses framed eyes that seemed constantly alert. He favored blazers thrown over worn band shirts, and he spoke as if every discussion might tip into something profound if pushed just a little further. At first, I admired him. He animated the texts, drawing out themes of repression, madness, and the uncanny from novels that already felt alive. Discussions felt charged, focused, almost electric. Participation made up nearly half the final grade, so I spoke often. Another student did as well. His name was Connor, a senior in the English program. He came from a fraternity known more for noise than nuance, yet he surprised everyone. He was tall, athletic, with perpetually messy blonde hair and an easy smile. When conversations lagged, he revived them with humor, tying modern references back to Gothic tropes without derailing the point. It never felt forced. Elias seemed to value us both, my careful analysis, Connor's ability to keep the room engaged. My first major paper focused on the doppelganger motif in Frankenstein. I spent days refining it, combing through criticism, shaping arguments, pushing myself harder than usual. When Elias returned it, the grade at the top read A+. The margins were crowded with comments praising the originality of my analysis and noting ideas he claimed he had never considered. The attention felt validating. After that, his focus on me intensified. In class, he would pause after my comments, then say things like, building on what Emily just pointed out, his gaze lingered longer than necessary. At the time, I told myself it was academic favoritism, nothing more. Engaged students often got more attention. Midway through the semester, social obligations increased. Our sorority partnered with Connor's fraternity for joint events tied to philanthropy. Bake sales, charity nights, casual gatherings that blurred into one another. Connor was always there, relaxed and charming. We talked about class, then drifted into music, movies, anything that gave us a break from coursework. One evening, under string lights in the backyard of his fraternity house, he asked me out for coffee. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into late-night study sessions that edged into something more intimate. It wasn't exclusive, and neither of us pretended it was. It felt simple, fitting easily into my already crowded life. The first crack appeared quietly. After one seminar, I stepped outside and saw Connor and Elias together near the building, laughing as they shared a vape pen. They looked comfortable, familiar. When I asked Connor about it later, he shrugged and joked about trying to stay on the TA's good side for extensions. I laughed along, but something about it stayed with me. Weeks later, I spent the night at Connor's place. I woke before dawn, unable to fall back asleep. His phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. Mine was across the room, charging. I don't know exactly why I picked his up. Maybe instinct had already started whispering. I guessed his passcode easily. The photos made my stomach drop. There were dozens of images of me. Some I recognized, pictures I had sent willingly, taken during the early excitement of our relationship. Others were unfamiliar. Candid shots on campus. Images from parties taken from angles that suggested distance, concealment. One photo showed me changing clothes in his room, unaware, exposed. Engaged students often got more attention. Midway through the semester, social obligations increased. Our sorority partnered with Connor's fraternity for joint events tied to philanthropy. Bake sales, charity nights, casual gatherings that blurred into one another. Connor was always there, relaxed and charming. We talked about class, then drifted into music, movies, anything that gave us a break from coursework. One evening, under string lights in the backyard of his fraternity house, he asked me out for coffee. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into late-night study sessions that edged into something more intimate. It wasn't exclusive, and neither of us pretended it was. It felt simple, fitting easily into my already crowded life. The first crack appeared quietly. After one seminar, I stepped outside and saw Connor and Elias together near the building, laughing as they shared a vape pen. They looked comfortable, familiar. When I asked Connor about it later, he shrugged and joked about trying to stay on the TA's good side for extensions. I laughed along, but something about it stayed with me. Weeks later, I spent the night at Connor's place. I woke before dawn, unable to fall back asleep. His phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. Mine was across the room, charging. I don't know exactly why I picked his up. Maybe instinct had already started whispering. I guessed his passcode easily. The photos made my stomach drop. There were dozens of images of me. Some I recognized, pictures I had sent willingly, taken during the early excitement of our relationship. Others were unfamiliar. Candid shots on campus. Images from parties taken from angles that suggested distance, concealment. One photo showed me changing clothes in his room, unaware, exposed. I set the phone down and lay there, staring into the dark, my mind racing. Shame tangled with fear. I said nothing that morning. A week later, doubt overpowered restraint. I checked his phone again. This time, I found messages sent to a number with no name attached. Alongside them were the same photos, intimate ones, shared repeatedly over months. Short captions accompanied them, transactional and cold. There were records of payments marked as tutoring fees. The recipient was Elias. I confronted Connor when he woke. The argument erupted instantly, loud and panicked. He tried to explain it away as academic research, as art, as anonymity. None of it held. I took screenshots of everything I could find, left his apartment, and returned to my sorority house shaking. By the next day, campus security was involved. Then local police. Under questioning, Connor admitted that Elias had approached him early in the semester, asking for information about promising students. The requests escalated when Elias learned about our relationship. Connor became a conduit, supplying images in exchange for money. Investigators uncovered similar complaints tied to Elias from other institutions. The fallout was swift. Connor was expelled mid-semester. Elias was fired, charged, and eventually sentenced to a short term followed by probation. It felt inadequate, but the process moved on without waiting for my sense of justice to catch up. I switched majors to avoid the department entirely. Therapy helped slowly. Still, vigilance became second nature. By senior year, I moved off campus, seeking distance from everything familiar. Some nights now, a black SUV parks across the street from my apartment. No visible plates. It might be nothing. It might be coincidence. But after everything that happened, I watched from behind the blinds, waiting, alert, never fully at rest. Call me Alex. I'm 24 now, but this happened 2 years ago, back when I was still living at my parents' house in rural Montana. Not the postcard version of Montana with ski resorts and tourists, but the quiet, empty stretches where dense pine forests press close to gravel roads and winter buries everything in white silence. Our house sat alone on 5 acres of land, a modest ranch-style place with a wide front yard and woods stretching behind it like an unbroken wall. The layout was simple. The living room faced the front, the kitchen connected to it, and a long hallway led to 3 bedrooms. My parents' room was on one end, the guest room in the middle filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture, and my bedroom at the very end of the hall. The nearest town was 20 miles away. Neighbors existed, technically, but they were far enough that you never saw lights at night. My parents left for a relative's wedding in Mexico, their first real vacation in years. I stayed behind because of work, handling remote tech support from home. The first night alone passed without incident. I watched shows until I fell asleep on the couch, then dragged myself to bed. The second night felt different. Nothing obvious, just a sense of unease that settled in once the house went quiet. I went to bed around midnight, leaving my window cracked despite the cold so the sharp mountain air could drift in. I woke suddenly. No sound had pulled me out of sleep, yet my heart was pounding as if something had shouted inside my chest. The room was pitch black. There was no moon, no light bleeding through the window. I lay still, letting my eyes adjust. Shapes slowly emerged. The outline of my dresser. The faint glow of the clock. Then I saw the bedroom door. It was open. I always closed it. Always. The closet door stood open too, the clothes inside swaying slightly, as if disturbed moments before. That alone was enough to make my skin prickle. I held my breath and listened. There was a sound soft, barely there. Fabric brushing against carpet. Then breathing. Shallow, controlled, and not my own. It came from the foot of the bed. Panic surged through me. My hand fumbled blindly for my phone on the nightstand. When I finally hit the flashlight, the beam exploded into the darkness. 2 figures stood there. They were dressed in dark clothing, faces hidden beneath hoods and masks. One of them held something metallic that caught the light for just a second. They recoiled as the beam hit them, splitting apart instantly. One lunged toward the closet. The other bolted for the door. I screamed. The sound tore out of me without thought. I swung the light wildly as I jumped from the bed. Something clattered onto the floor near my feet. When the beam caught it, I saw a serrated hunting knife from our kitchen block. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. I chased them as far as the living room, phone clutched in my shaking hand. The front door slammed open, cold night air rushing in. I reached it just in time to see shadows disappearing into the trees beyond the yard. No car engine. No headlights. Just the sound of crunching leaves fading into silence. I locked the door, then every other lock in the house. I dragged a chair against my bedroom door and sat on the floor, back pressed to it, until the police arrived. It took 30 minutes. Rural response times don't rush. They searched the property with flashlights, finding boot prints in the mud, but no sign of anyone nearby. There was no forced entry. One deputy suggested I might have forgotten to lock the door. I told him I hadn't. He nodded, unconvinced. My parents flew home early, furious, and shaken. They blamed carelessness more than anything else. New locks were installed. Motion lights went up around the house. Life tried to return to normal. But I couldn't forget the knife. Burglars don't stand over sleeping people. They don't bring weapons into bedrooms just to leave empty-handed. I moved to the city not long after, taking a job that put distance between me and the woods. I thought it was over. Last winter, I went home for the holidays. A snowstorm rolled in late one night, knocking the power in and out. I woke to scratching at my window. When I looked, there was nothing but drifting snow. In the morning, I found footprints circling the house. Fresh. Deliberate. My parents said it was nothing. Animals. Wind. Anything but what my mind insisted on seeing. The woods keep their secrets. And sometimes, they don't leave them behind. My name is Lena. I'm 25 now, living in Denver, but this began in Austin, Texas, shortly after I finally left my ex. The relationship had drained me slowly, leaving me anxious and exhausted, and when it ended, I felt desperate for a clean slate. I had just finished graduate school and landed a remote marketing job. For the first time, my life felt entirely my own. I moved into a third-floor apartment in a busy complex, complete with a small balcony overlooking a shared courtyard and pool. The place was always active: families, young professionals, people coming and going at all hours. I kept to myself. A nod to the older couple downstairs, polite avoidance of the loud gamers next door. Nothing unusual. The first encounter was forgettable. One evening, heading down the stairs to my car, I nearly collided with a man coming up. Mid-40s, receding hairline, khakis, a plain polo shirt. He muttered an apology and squeezed past me. I didn't think about it again. A few days later, I saw him near the mailboxes, pretending to sort through keys. He glanced at me, then quickly away. It registered, but I dismissed it as coincidence. The pattern formed slowly. Too slowly to notice all at once. My mornings were predictable: yoga at 7, then coffee. One morning, before leaving, I glanced out my window and saw a gray sedan idling in the parking lot, positioned directly across from my building. The engine was running, but the driver didn't move. I waited, heart racing, until he finally pulled away. I left late that day. That evening, miles from home at my usual grocery store, I saw him again. He stood in the produce aisle, turning apples over in his hands one by one. When our eyes met, he smiled faintly and nodded. I abandoned my cart and rushed out, shaking. After that, he was everywhere. Near the gym entrance, even though it was out of the way. Parked near my car at night. Sitting on benches along routes I walked regularly. He never approached me. Never spoke. He just watched. I told a friend, who urged me to document everything. I took photos of the car, logged dates and times. One night, peeking through my blinds, I caught him standing in the courtyard below, phone pressed to his ear, the screen lighting his face as he stared up at my window. I called the non-emergency line. An officer arrived and drove around the complex, but the man was gone. I was told no crime had occurred yet. The note came a few nights later. Slipped under my door while I slept. Lock your balcony at night. Wouldn't want accidents. My hands shook so badly I could barely read it. I packed a bag and stayed with a coworker that same night. 2 months later, I broke my lease, paid the penalty, and moved to Denver. New city. New building. A high-rise with a doorman and security cameras. I rebuilt my routines carefully, believing distance would end it. 3 weeks ago, I sat in a downtown cafe, sipping a latte, watching snow fall outside. Across the street, he stood near a storefront, pretending to look through the window. The same man. He crossed the street and entered the cafe. I slipped out the back, ordered a ride, and went home shaking. Security reviewed footage later. The gray sedan had been in visitor parking earlier that day. Police helped me file for protection, but without a confirmed identity, it went nowhere. I don't know how he found me. I deleted social accounts, changed numbers, locked everything down. Still, yesterday, I saw the car again, parked blocks from my building. He never rushes. He watches.